This is the stochastic fiction game. This is a timed writing game where I'm going to give myself today 90 minutes, and within that 90 minutes, I'm going to write a story according to the stochastic fiction outline, which I just created. And at the end of this time, I'm going to read the story aloud and I'm going to rate the story. To begin the next step of the game, let's go ahead and read the outline that it generated randomly. And for today's stochastic fiction game, we have these story elements to write to in the next, now about 20 hour and 29 minutes. The story elements for today are setting time future, excuse me, setting main location basement, conflict person versus supernatural, quantity of primary characters mini, point of view third, tense past tense, genre dystopian, format flash fiction. Well, those are the story elements for today's stochastic fiction game. And I will be narrating aloud what inspires me during this process too. So most of the time it won't be me just sitting here typing, staring at the screen, creating words, though that's probably where my happy spot in life is at times. For these story elements with future, basements, supernatural, mini characters, third, past tense, dystopia, flash fiction, all those things, like the dystopia in the future, our current society, that goes hand in hand, so it's very easy for me to fictionalize such a state. Having this in a basement makes it a closed environment, which I can deal with. I've been in basements before. I've already starting to see some sort of weird, living condition inside of the basement of a house. Person versus supernatural, a little bit different. Many characters are going to be in this basement. It's third person past tense. Past tense, I got to watch myself because I like my present tense, but past tense, I got to start being able to write just a little bit better. Because once you write past tense, it's easier to go in the past. It doesn't seem so awkward than if you're writing present tense and have to talk about the past outside of narrative dialogue. Anyway, that's a topic or thought stream that doesn't need to happen right about now. Basement and future. Supernatural. The supernatural. Person versus supernatural. I mean, maybe like the digital, maybe that's just it. If it's the future, you're in a basement, popular place to go ahead and hang out and lose track of time and get yourself sucked into a digital world. If this is the future, we got to have something a little bit more than just a personal computer interfacing with, and then you can think that maybe this does manifest ghosts, this digital residue that stays within your device or within your mind or whatever your chip you have in your head. And so you have like these digital ghosts that haunt you possibly once you get the chip in your mind. Is that really supernatural though? That's the thing that, is no. I mean, that's explainable. Digital ghosts. I'm going to start with that title. And I'm going to try to start because it is a flash fiction story. I'm going to try to make. Usually I write and then I create the title. I'm going to create the title and then write today. Because with flash fiction, a lot of the times, if you could set up the entire scene in the conflict and what you need to resolve and make it big enough, you can have an easier time writing the words for the story. At least my experience. I can come back and rewrite the title after. Digital ghosts, digital souls, digital haunting. What are these voices in my head? Is that really supernatural though? Not really. Maybe that's would be like so far in the future, people really don't realize that. Can I somehow make our own existence somehow seem like some digital construct? Yes, I can. I don't know if I can do that in flash fiction in an hour and 25 minutes and make it a story that I'd even want to read. Digital ghost is inside my. Get the digital ghost out of my mind. How do I? How do I get? How do I get? How do I get? Let's set up a question. Let's make it easy. How do I get? Not easy. This could still be, bad after I'm done. How do I get the digital ghost out of my head? How do I get the digital ghosts out of my head? How do I get the digital ghosts out of the chip in my head? Is that really spiritual, though? I mean, supernatural? Not really. That's more like tech. Because it's explained. You have a chip in your head, and there's like digital residue of all these agents coming in and helping your agent translate data into your mind and knows the patterns of your mind. So, I mean, I might as well try it because I don't know. Why not? It's the future, it's dystopia, it's supernatural. How do I get the digital ghosts out of the chip in my head? I don't know. That's the question. How do I start this? I want to get a voice. What is it? The narrator, though. It's not first person. So I can't get too, like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I can't get too weird. I can't make them talk like they're. Well, I can. I can always get too weird. It could be a person. Maybe it's. I mean, if I could do it, second person would be so much better at this. You could be the ghost, right? First person would be a little bit better because then I can have some weird futuristic accent about a person talking about a ghost in his head and what that means. I'm trying to think of the author that I'd read a couple books of. That what was his name? Man, so many. Anyway, I'm gonna move on away from that thought about trying to latch credit, or at least not credit, but feeling more comfortable writing oddly in science fiction. Ian Banks. Ian Banks? Ian Banks is who I'm thinking of as a writer. But Ian Banks, I'm just using their existence is allowing and encouraging me to write in a way, even in a narrative form, not first or second person. Second person would be really cool. You could be talking to the person in the head. Third person. Third person could be one of the ghosts. How do I get my ghost out of this? I don't know. I'm confused. How do I get digital ghosts out of the chip in my head? How do I get my digital ghost? It's in a basement. God, fudge. Like I got a ghost, like I'm gonna, in a future dystopian, I could go anywhere. Like ghost stories, I guess. And I gotta show some dystopia. I mean, dystopia is having a bunch of chip in your head, in my opinion. especially because you're going to have like advertisements going into your mind. You won't be able to control it. It'd be crazy. We'll go there if we don't kill ourselves first, which is probably more probable day after day. How do I get the digital ghosts out of the chip in my head? No, I can't have I. How do digital ghosts, how to exercise digital ghost out of the chip? How do I exercise the digital ghost out of the mind chip? I am just going first person on this too. I gotta like have this. Let's try this. So let's roll the dice. 1, 2, female, 3, 4, male, 5, 6, they. Is 6. To go they. They're digital ghosts purely now. They tried the factory reset. It is past tense, right? So past tense. Dystopian. Third person. Mini. Oof. I gotta have like 3 characters in this flash fiction story. Supernatural. Oh boy. This will be fun. So my first thought is I gotta like, they tried the factory reset, so I can get omniscient. And the factory reset, so I gotta now make up. They got a chip in their head. You're gonna have some sort of external box that's like the master override. So if your thought disconnects with your chip and your chip's messing up your thought, and it's like just pushing data out and it's not letting data in really, you'd want to have an external box that send a signal to the chip to turn it off or do whatever you wanted to reset it, because you'd want that hard reset, even though technically it's not hardwired. Maybe you have to like set it against your skull. They press. So let's kind of like define that. So they press the box. They press. What the hell am I calling this thing? They press the box. The reset. The mind chip configuration box. The mind chips configuration box. Yeah. They press mind chips configure. They press their mind chips. They press their mind chips configuration box. I just got thought up in how that now I'm gonna have to like include other people. But also getting into this, like I'll probably use this someplace else. At least this idea of the like configuration box, because I have a lot of stories where people get chips in their heads. United States of Eden, which I'm going to create a large language model to be able to then publish. It's a blog now, and then as well as the book that I'm trying to get published called Illegal Alien. Everyone gets to put a chip in their head, citizenship. They press their mind chips configuration box tried. They press their mind chips configuration box against. They pressed. We got to do past tense according to the stochastic fiction game outline. They press their mind chips configuration box against their temple. And pressed the reset button three times. while they had control over their body. They're going to be possessed. Maybe it's a real ghost. Maybe that could be the twist. Maybe that is the twist. That is the, like, the dystopia is maybe, there's some, I don't know what the twist was. The twist was in my mind, so I can at least say it aloud and get beyond it, was that it's a real ghost. Like, it's not some agent inside their mind chip that leaving a residue that's left residues. Because I would imagine that, I guess you'd only want your agent, maybe an agent outside, because you'd want your agent in the mind chip. You would not want to let any agent inside your mind chip. How do I get the digital ghost? But then you can imagine your agent could get influenced by a particular other agent and then start to actually manifest in its own agency, and then you'd have this other sort of, yeah, that's crazy. Fun times. How to excise the digital ghost out of my mind chip. Trying to exercise. How about that? Trying to exorcise, not exercise. Exercise. Like, I'm going to have to look that up. I want to get that word at least right. Exorcist. I don't know how to spell it. Here's my search and return. Exorcise. Oh, I need an S. Exercise. C. Oh, man, I did like EXOSIZE instead of what the search and return engine gave me correctly. Exercise. Trying. They pressed their mind chip's configuration box against their temple and pressed the reset button 3 times while they had control over their body. Their vision. Okay, so they're in a basement. They pressed their mind chip's configuration box against their temple and pressed the reset button 3 times while they had control over their body. They stood in their basement and still heard the mumblings They stood in their basement and still heard the mumblings. Just trying to, like an AI, like an agent, not AI, something with actually developer. They stood in their basement and still heard the mumblings of They stood in their basement and still heard the mumblings of what? Something. They stood in their basement and still heard the mumblings of agent residue. Agentic, mumblings of agentic souls, of residue, processing, I guess, remodeling their mind, Their agent. Speaking, whispering, 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 whispering. Whispering. What do they got to whisper something. Whispering something. If I don't whisper a thing, then it's just like they're whispering. Ooh. Oh. Well, energy went out on the clock. I should have charged that like I had an idea of doing yesterday. That is not right now. So I can't change that fact. Let's just move on. The digital, like, I gotta have a whisper. What are they whispering? So I just don't want it boring. Like, they're whispering. Ooh. Let's get back on that tangent of insulting what I wrote because it's trash. They stood in their basement and still heard, they stood in their basement and still heard the mumblings, the mumblings of agentic residue. So I've got mumblings. So like the mumblings of residue. I heard agentic residue mumblings. Triggering, because you like triggering a sensual reaction without a word, without a sound. They remain. They paced, walked, sat, and stood in their basement for at least a day, judging. And I'm getting really loose with the language from God. In the basement, while the sun glowed through the barred windows. No, they're not going to be barred. Through the glowed around the heavy drapes covering the small windows near the ceiling of the basement. Maybe the person is just possessed themselves. I don't know if supernatural. Residues, mumblings. I gotta have. What are they mumbling? They gotta mumble something. That's like mumblings about past topics, like how's that like? Like what? They stood in the basement and still heard agentic residue mumblings about past topics like triggering a central reaction with the sound. They paced, walked, sat, and stood in the basement while the sun glowed around the heavy drapes covered with the small windows, covering the small windows. They paced, walked, sat, and stood in their basement while the sun glowed around the heavy drapes covering the small windows near the ceiling. Glowed around. The sun glow outlined. pressing the mind chip's fist-sized configuration box. There we go. We got some sort of we got a lot of similes like her as, but hey, like triggering like this. Let's not use them anymore. Let's just settle down on this simile. They pressed their mind ship's fist-sided configuration box against their temple and pressed the reset button 3 times while they had control of their body. While they had control of their body, they stood in their basement and still heard the agentic residue mumblings about past topics, triggering like a sensual reaction of sound. Mumblings of past topics like, oh my God, let's have another simile. What would be the spiritual thing that triggers it if this was a real ghost? And I got time on the stream. I said 90 minutes. So whatever the stream time will be, I should stop. I should check that real quick. So stream time is at 26 minutes. I said 90 minutes. So let's go ahead and I got an hour. I've got an hour and I'm writing. So I feel a little comfortable. It's flash fiction. Not that, I'm either going to succeed okay that I can edit it, or it should be total trash. I'll never come back to it again. I'll probably never come back to the story again unless I can find it to fit in something else that I'm writing. So, covering the small widows. I'm going to cover some widows because they were married, and somehow they were female windows. Okay, the small windows near the ceiling of the basement. They stood until night, pressing the configuration box against their head. Boom, paragraph. Their head. The mumblings. Then nothing. Then they floated. Free of body. Feeling nothing. But knowing all. All right, so I don't know where this was going. I wrote it. Yes. I feel like that'd be the next state, though. I said that they just gain control of their body, so I have to have at least a follow-up paragraph of where they lose control of their body and then they come back to. I'm still trying to get to the spiritual thing. Maybe they're losing their soul. They're losing their analog soul to this digital soul as it rewrites their mind and their makeup. Flee of their body like a ghost. Ooh, God, let's use a simile like twice in a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. Oh my God. This would probably be edited away if we're probably wouldn't be in it. Yeah. Then they float free of the body like a soul, feeling nothing, but knowing all. If only you could focus on one thought. Oh, wait. They've. No. I see second person. Oh, my God. This would have been a great second person. I feel I would have. Yes. I mean, it's sort of that concept of that would be the agents, like talking to the human and all that fun stuff. And you do the. Yeah. But it's third person. So they float free of the body, feeling nothing but knowing all. Knowing all but unable to focus on one thought, on one Then they float free of the body like a soul, feeling nothing but knowing all, but unable to focus on one thought. Then they float free of the body like a soul, feeling nothing but knowing all, unable to focus on one thought. So that now that they're at least in the state of when they're outside their body, I just need to write to that. And then I gotta somehow maybe try to make this not a digital soul, but a real live ghost. The analog version. So what I gotta think right now is I'm feeling nothing but knowing all, but unable to focus on one thought. What's that state seem like? I don't want to use another simile because I've used like 3 or 4 already. 4. Yeah, a little too many. Feeling nothing but knowing all, and I'm able to focus on one thought. Then they feel their body again. And light glows through the body again. Goes around the window, glows around the drapes. What's the next step? If the box doesn't work and you're still having this feeling of being possessed and you're thinking it's your chip inside your mind and your digital agent that controls the interfacing with other digital agents has influenced yours enough you suspect that it's corrupted, it's trying to reset it, but it's really a ghost. And that's why the light's coming back on and the ghost is gone. And drapes again, but doesn't want to leave the basement. What would be the next step if the configuration box that could reset your mind chip's agent to its original state doesn't work? Or maybe it has worked, but it's really a ghost. I mean, your next step would be to call somebody, but you don't get a response, right? Or it's out of business. Or maybe you're a hacker and you just made your own agent and put your own chip in your head and you're trying to figure it out. But it's a real ghost. And what's the crux of that? What's the point of it anyway? Trying to exorcise a digital ghost out of a mind chip. If that's the story state, but the stochastic fiction game story elements is supernatural. So I don't know if I'm actually hitting that parameter with the conflict. This is, so I have to make it a real ghost. It would otherwise be technology. And, I'm super doubtful there's such things as ghosts that exists, at least in our current conceptual imagery of them. So it's a little hard pressed for me to start to be able to write how a digital agent could have some soul, because it doesn't go to the current narrative of ghosts that I've been adopted and told throughout my existence. So given that, I have to put probably a real ghost if I want to put this as supernatural. So I got to write back to the ghost, and that's the daytime right now. So then they float free of the body like a soul, feeling nothing but knowing all, unable to focus on one thought. I don't want the but there. I'll just throw some commas at this, and maybe it'll make sense. They feel their body, and light glows around the drapes again. They feel their body, one light glows around drapes. I hope that's how I spell drapes. If not, well, I'm not like I'm throwing this on paper. It's the Western Wide Web. Then they feel. We should probably put then they float. Let's not have so many thens. This isn't some sort of like program. Although I guess maybe I'm arranging it if you're talking about agency. Maybe the thens fit. Else then, if then, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Pseudo coding language. They feel their body and light glow around the when. Let's put when there. That way. And I got to have past tense. So they floated. And I think all this is in past tense. They stood, right? So then they floated. I have to hit that parameter. Feeling nothing. What's just the second person? If this was second person, I think I'd enjoy the story and writing it more. But that is not what came from felt their body. I felt their body. When light glowed, let's put that past tense. But second person is not what the stochastic fiction script outputted for me today. But don't want to leave the basement. And let's not have that. They felt their body when light glowed around the drapes again. That's great. I felt my body when blah, blah, blah. What are they going to do? What's the second thing they do? So they tried to reset. They think it's still the digital, and it's just a real ghost. I probably have to change the title at the end, and I've got probably about, if I'm looking at stream time, I said 90 minutes. I got an hour, I got 54 minutes left. They felt their body when the light glowed around the drapes again, but don't want to leave the basement. I don't want to leave the basement. That just sucks. They felt their body when light glowed again. They pressed what do they call this? It is the config. I should just call it the config box. No, unless you're probably writing a lot of, let's go configuration box. They pressed the configuration box against their temple. What were they gonna like call maintenance on this thing? I mean, if your configuration box for your head chip doesn't necessarily reset to the default standards in which they put it in your mind and configured it for, but I mean, eventually that wouldn't work, right? Because then your model would change over time with the way that you think as well, and your brain deterioration. So that agent would have to adapt to that change too, and be able to send it off to other agents. So you wouldn't want a full factory reset. I guess since they don't want to, so they press the configuration box against their temple to try to launch their last saved model state before the whispers, the mumbles, the mumble residue left by after their agent interfaced with another. That's funny. I think I'm going to do that. Let's just dive into religion too. If we're going to throw a ghost out here, we got to say that there's some sort of heavily belief in the deity. Maybe that's it. Ooh, there's a set, was it? But you click and click and click. The model rolled back changes by the week from the last save of writing, of learning. We'll say this is well, this is dystopia, damn it. I gotta have this to be dystopian, right? So let's go back. Let's just make sure. I'm trying to get like positive. Although I gotta add the what is the new term, which I'd like, the non-dystopian. It's like cyber dreams or something like that. where you focus on the positive effects of technology, which I think needs to happen more of as well. And I got to start too. It's so easy to get into dystopia these days, given it's all around us. The model world back to change by the week from rolled to past revisions. The model rolled to past revisions. The past weekly saved revisions. Click and click the model world to past weekly revisions from after what's this, what, like, I'm thinking of things that wouldn't be negative. Like I have to make this dystopian, so I guess the standard things in dystopia, if you had a chip and you're saving it, what would call out the last thought for that save? So I want to give for example, to at least increase the understanding of what this chip does, how it saves a thing within the short sentence paragraph. So I want an example, and that example has to be in a dystopian world because of the random element of this is dystopian story. It's in the future, technology, all these things align for this to work. It's in a basement. What am I rolling back to? Maybe it's the sex. What's predominantly, like, what clicks? I guess it's all the things that click, right? So let's go 3 of them. Sex, violence, and fame. If you want to be internet famous, sex, violence, fame. Those will get the clicks. You know, there's a lot of happiness, but this is dystopia. So this would just taking the cream of those cropped. I know the younger generation, which I love it for it. They're a little bit more optimistic and positive, even though they live in a dystopia we created. And they're helping create too. It's all of our fault. Yeah. Now that I'm in the dystopia mindset, let's write about what the past revisions are. So we want sex, violence, and entertainment. Let's start with the sex. And it could be sexual entertainment. So it's like so the model world back to past weekly saved revisions from what's something that I don't want to get like graphic, but I'm not using some sort of popular service now. If we have mind chip, something like OnlyFans takes on a whole new level. That would be like cyber. Everyone knows the word cyber. Cybersex from cybersex modes. Roll back weekly saved revisions from cybersex moans to cybersex. To snuff videos, to how about torture porn? This is dystopia. To something off, so it seems weird. No, I mean to work. To a mind ache after working to create data into information. Create data, entropy data, entropic data. into now I'm mixing in something I shouldn't. Let's not do these. This is not United States of Eden, where I have AI. Their basically source of being able to grow is creating entropy, because entropy is a destructive force and it alters models, model data, things. But then that destruction causes ones to reassemble it into normalcy almost after the destruction. So there's a certain amount of information manipulation that has to happen in order to construct that entropy into either positive or negative thing, depending on where you're getting your information from. That's United States of Eden. This is not United States of Eden. This is just some dystopian future. And I gotta think, so cyber sex, torture porn, and let's go presidential. Presidential. I hope that's how you spell presidential. I think. Maybe. I don't care. Nothing's presidential these days in my world. The model, and if it is, I want to step away from it because it seems more torture porn these days for being a president than it is being respectful. Anyway, the model roll to past weekly saved revisions of model revisions. So we say what we're saving. What time do I got? I probably got about 45 minutes left. I am not looking at the stream time right now. I'm not looking at anything but these words. Saved weekly. The model rule to past weekly saved model revisions from cybersex to torture porn and presidential mind ache after the work. But I don't want to leave the basement again. From cybersex to torture porn to presidential mind, to presidential rantings. Ache. Until the models are no longer, until they roll back the model. So what am I saying? So the model roll to past weekly revisions. Click, click, click. Let's see. The last model state before the mumble residue left after their agent interfaced with another. Before the mumble residue. I don't even know what I wrote there. I want to read this paragraph again, so when I read it aloud, it ain't terrible, and I'll maybe be able to even complete it if I get it better in my mind at this point. So they felt their body when light glowed around the drapes again. They pressed the configuration box against their temple to try to launch their last saved model before the mumble residue was left. I hate using to be verbs. The last model state when no mumbles, no rumbles spread through their minds. There we are. Their mind, their brain, their brain. I will say mind. It's a collective thing, right? Brain's the physical part. Your thoughts are the biologically digital part. When no mumble residue spread through their mind. Click and click, the model rolled to past weekly saved revisions from last week's cybersex to the previous of torture porn. And a month ago's I don't know where this is. It's a ghost. I got to get to the ghost, and I got 45 minutes to get to a real ghost. And I don't know. Let's see. So click the model world back to PC Weekly, saved revisions from last week's cybersex to the previous of torture porn and the revision from a month ago. Spreading, altering of presidential rantings of hate until the mind ached, the head ached, until the head ached, until the head ached, and the models no longer fit their current configuration inside their mind, of their mind. Oh, right. So this is at least getting to dystopia. So that should fill the bill for dystopia right there. I mean, that's one of the parameters. That definitely to me is walking into dystopia. The characters, it's in the basement, future, yes, dystopian, yes, past tense, I think I've hit it. Third person, much better. It was second, but that's not what was created. So we got third. The mini characters, the supernatural, I got to write to the ghost right now. It seems so unfair. I'm going to miss that parameter. I'm try to fit it in. They felt their body when light glowed in the drapes again. No longer mine, and the mumble remained. Remained. They stopped pressing the rollback button. No longer fixed current red until the head ached and the mumbles remained, and the model no longer fit the current configuration of their head. The mumbles remained. And the model no longer fit their current. I gotta somehow put in, get spiritual, and show how this is corrupting the soul. That would be the other character. And the model no longer fit their current configuration of their mind. They stopped pressing the rollback button and stood. Hearing the mumblings and not know if it were spoke. During all three previous revisions. Now, this will be difficult to read simply because, well, my own doing. The way that I wrote this inside of a terminal and using Vim. Oh, that's better. There we go. That will fit in the frame. Now I gotta have the ghost, the actual ghost, physical ghost. Let's make sure I got this. So, boom, reset. They floated in one thought. What's the one day? Feeling nothing but knowing all, unable to focus on one thought. Okay. What time do I have? I got 34 minutes. So how do I get the ghost? How do I move a ghost from this state to something else? So they pressed their mind chips, fisted size configuration, fist sized. They stood until night, pressing the configuration box in their head. Then they floated free of the body like a soul, feeling nothing but knowing all, unable to focus on one thought. They're dying. That's it. They're dying. Their soul is dying. Trying to exorcise the digital ghosts out of the mind chips while their soul dies. Can they exorcise the digital ghosts out of their mind chip while their soul dies? No, you can't. Can they exorcise their digital soul, the digital ghosts, out of their mind chip while their soul dies? That's it. No, that's the answer. It's too late. That's sad, but true. I'm guilty. Not everybody is, but I'm certainly a pressure and pusher of that thought, the digital interaction and integration. All right, I'm going to read this. So how do I do this? I got 30 minutes. I can do this in 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I'm not sure. I don't know. When the night comes, you cry. The night comes. While the light around the window fades, they float, they sleep. While they sit in a chair, feeling the mumbles. Man, do I not? My power to hit that Y button is a little bit not good. I should do some exercise. My Y reach. Anyway, while the sunlight, while the sun fades, sun outline. Around window. I like shades and fades. Like I've been doing that way too much in my writing. While the sun fades around the window, shades, they sit in a chair. trying to think away from the mumble. They sit in their chair, trying to think away from the mumble until it silences, like lost in a meditative prayer. They stare into the dark and feel their body rise, float. And feel the body float. And connect and float and flow. Float and flow around the room. I mean, feeling and knowing all and in control. And knowing all. Feeling and knowing all. They stare into the dark and feel their body float and flow around the room, feeling and knowing all. Flow around the room, feeling and knowing all. They stare into the dark. And feel their body float and flow around the room, feeling and knowing all. Well, I got too many whiles here. I'm doing a lot of while. While the sun fades around the shades, they sit in the chair, trying to think away from the mumble until it silences like lost in the meditative prayer. They stare into the dark and feel their body float and flow around the room, feeling knowing all. Feeling and knowing. Like what's the feeling and knowing, feeling and knowing, feeling freedom from the mumbles, from the digital mumbles. And rewriting thought. Disconnecting their mind from their body. I don't want to write it a soul. What do I got here? Yeah. And they're going to be forever lost in the mumbles. They're not going to be free. They're going to be more digital. Thought, feeling nothing but knowing all. Feeling all, feeling and knowing all. They float free of the body like a soul, feeling and knowing all, unable to focus on one thought. I already have soul there. The sun fades and they sit in the chair, trying to think away the mumble again. Until it silences like lost in meditative prayer, they stare in the silence, the dark, and feel their body float and flow into the room, feeling freedom from the digital mumbles again, disconnecting their mind from their body. What do I have here? Feeling and unable to focus. I'll like the smell of fresh bread. And what's like one thing? Really relaxing. The hug from a best friend. Feeling and knowing they exist in laughter at that joke. Near over coffee on the deck during the sunrise. They feel while the sun fades around the window shades, they sit in a chair trying to think away from the mumble, disconnecting their mind from their body. Disconnecting the soul. Silencing the mumbles trapped in their mind. And altering the body. I don't know where this is really going to go. I don't know if it went anywhere, to be honest with you. I do have 22 minutes left. I'm going to try to use this. I don't hate this. I don't know if it has an ending. I don't know if I'll be able to... Okay. I got at least 4 paragraphs here. But how am I going to end this? They're dead. This is dystopia. Welcome to dystopia. Population your mind. Same thing with utopia. So kind of offset. So I do have utopian in here as an option. I don't know if it comes up enough, but there's a new happy, glowy sort of, which I like. I think people need to write about positive things a little bit more, not to be Pollyannish, but at least give some optimism. Because there's not a lot of that going on these days. While the sun fades around window shields, we don't need a double around, right? It's terrible. They sit in their chair. They're bed-like. Trying to think away from the mumbles until it silences like a lost meditative prayer. They stare into the room, into the dark, and feel their body float and flow around the room. feeling freedom from the digital mumbles, disconnecting their soul, silencing the mumbles trapped in their mind and altering the body. Free they are. They feel. Until light glows around their body, only wanting to sit. Soul sinks into their body and mind mumbles. War is the mumbles of war, of killing, of rape. Free they feel until the light glows around their bodies and their soul sinks into the body and mind's mumbles of war, of killing, of rape, of acceptance. What's the title of this? Man, this is so dystopian. Probably. Can they exorcise the digital ghost out of the mind chip while their soul dies? This last paragraph. No is the answer. This is dystopian. It would have been kind of cool if it was utopian, to write away from it. You know, and show how it would be more corrective. I'm not even a religious person. I still believe in the soul. Free they think, free they feel until the light glows around their body and their soul sinks into their body and mind mumbles of war, of killing, of rape, of acceptance. They drop the configuration box and let the mumbles talk. And let the mumbles talk and speak and preach while their soul finally dies. Let the agentic mumbles talk, speak, and preach. There we are. I think that's, I guess it doesn't need to be a paragraph. It could be. I could go into some deep process. Can they exorcise the digital ghost out of the mind chip while their soul dies? This is dystopian, so no. And what about in reality? Well, I'm no Puritan. I don't think the Puritans were Puritans. All right, well, let's not lose voice while I read this aloud. I'm just going to read it aloud and kind of be done. I think, God, I don't want that to fall flat. Let me ponder upon this end for a second. So, of killing, a rape of acceptance. They drop the configuration box and let the agent mumbles, talk, and speak and preach while their soul finally dies. Model their mind. While they're full. I mean, because when I mean modeling their body too, like from personal experience, I mean, I'm a very, at times, stressed person, and that's all in my head. I apply that to myself. I put myself through stress, which increases heart rate, causes high blood pressure, hypertension, and destroys your body. So that's my example of how your mind can destroy your body and model it to fit it. All right, let's read this story aloud. Let's read the Stochastic Fiction Games story elements. There may be many characters. I see that one error, but let's start from the top of the stochastic story elements for today's Stochastic Fiction game. Setting time future, setting place main location basement, conflict person versus supernatural, quantity of primary characters many, point of view third, tense past tense, genre dystopian, format flash fiction. For today's Stochastic Fiction game story, we have it calling it Can They Exorcise the Digital Ghosts Out of My Mind Chip While Their Soul Dies? Can they exorcise the digital ghosts out of the mind while their soul dies? They pressed their mind chip's fist-sized configuration box against their temple and pressed the reset button 3 times while they had control over their body. They stood in their basement and still heard agentic residue mumblings about past topics, triggering a central reaction with a sound. They paced, walked, sat, and stood in their basement while the sun glow outlined the heavy drapes, covering the small windows near the ceiling of the basement. They stood until night, pressing the configuration box against their head. Then they floated free of the body like a soul, feeling and knowing all, like the smell of fresh bread and the hug of a best friend. They existed in laughter at the jokes Susan told over coffee on the deck during the sunrise years ago. They felt. They felt their body when the light glowed in the drapes, around the drapes again. They pressed the configuration box against their temple to try to launch their last saved model state when no mumble residue spreads through their mind. Click, click, and click, the model rolled back to past weekly saved revisions from the last week's cyber sex to the previous of torture porn, and revisions from a month ago of the presidential rantings of hate until the head ached. The mumbles remain and the model no longer fixed their current configuration of their mind. They stopped pressing the rollback button and stood hearing the mumbling. Poor people should be our slaves and grateful to serve, and not knowing where or who spoke. While the sun faded around the window shades, they sat in their bed-like chair, trying to think away from the mumbles until it silenced like the lost in the meditative prayer. They stared into the dark and felt their body float and flowed around the room, feeling freedom from the digital mumbles, disconnecting their soul, silencing the mumble trapped in their mind and altering the body. Free they felt until the light glowed around their body and their soul sank into the body and minds mumbled a war of killing, of rape, of acceptance. They dropped the configuration box and let the angelic mumbles talk and speak and preach and model their mind and body while their soul finally died. That was the stochastic fiction game story for today. I mean, I think I hit something in my mind, maybe not my soul, but I'd like to edit this someday, and actually I think I could probably push this forward as a story, or at least part of a story. Is it flash fiction? Possibly. I will rate this a 4 today and pat myself on the back thinking that at least it's not total shit. Not total. It smells a little bit good some places. And with that, that is the stochastic fiction story for today. As is my writing process, I save not only the words I wrote today inside of a Git repository to save the revision, but also all the dialogue I have just spoke to give intent and show how I wrote this. Likely not to humans, but that's all right. I've been doing this for many years, and I realize the only thing that can actually read all these things and actually hold it within their context proper to process is some agency that's not human. Write the story created through the game and rated to be a 4, at least in my mind right now. And I don't give those lightly, but I mean, given the context, probably like this a little bit more. I'll probably read this again and feel differently, but for today, maybe I'm just feeling like I want to give myself a break and not have to think dystopias all around. I'd love, hopefully, to be able to write the Utopian one of those someday. If such a stochastic fiction game configuration happens, I'll let that happen or not. I got many other things to do in life that, well, I have to think about too.